Good afternoon. Once again, it is indeed my distinct honor and privilege to be here and to participate in this auspicious occasion. To the President and CEO, Ms. Lori Constantino Brown of Bridges of America, and to Barney Bishop, the President of the Florida Smart Justice Alliance. Thank you, Barney, for giving me about 2 hours notice that you wanted me to be your keynote for lunch. I will say that that's longer than I've had in some other occasions when I have walked into the room and they said, "You're the keynote speaker." In either case, I'm Jerry Demings, and as you can see, I am not the famed Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd. There's a little difference between us. I am from Orange County and he is from Polk County. He's slightly taller, but I'm better looking. And there may also be a few other subtle differences between us that I won't point out this afternoon. But I do stand before you in perfect humility. And I've learned just to be myself and not try to be someone else. For example, I could not be Grady Judd and get away with the same things that he gets away with saying. I'm reminded that a few years ago, there was an unfortunate shooting incident in Polk County in which an individual was wanted, a fugitive from justice, for having, I believe, shot a law enforcement officer. The Polk County Sheriff's Office was able to locate the individual and fired somewhere upwards of over 100 rounds at one person. When the news media interviewed the famed Grady Judd, they asked him, "Sheriff, did it take that many rounds to subdue the individual?" And I verified this with his staff just a few moments ago, and he made a statement, something to the effect, "Well, we probably would have shot him more, but we ran out of rounds, or we ran out of bullets," or something like that. If that had been me in Orange County, I would have been certainly sued. But in either case, as we just celebrated the 85th birthday of the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, I'm reminded that it has been 50 years since one of the greatest speeches was ever given by an American. It was August 28, 1963, when Reverend Dr. King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. I embrace much of what Dr. King said. I embrace the dream and the mission of smart justice for the prevention and reduction of crime and delinquency, and to enhance the quality of justice for all Floridians. What a noble undertaking that you all engage in. My comments this afternoon will focus on leaders having the boldness to bring about effective change through the Smart Justice Alliance. Innovative leaders bring about effective change. I will talk in 4 parts. First, I'll talk about leadership. I will challenge you to examine yourselves and to see what kind of leader are you. I will talk about an apparent identity crisis that we're having with our teenagers. Then I'll talk about some crime trends, and then I'll conclude by talking about the quality of justice in America. Organizations like Bridges of America, who have served for 34 years now, you should be commended for the work that you've done to make a difference in the lives of average Floridians, Americans, and I guess Canadians as well. Much has been accomplished over the years, but now is not the time to stop, because we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and relying on the foundation of a nation that has been shaken and weakened over the years. Let me focus on a true story about a missed leadership opportunity as I frame point number one in my commentary this afternoon. In 1993, a photographer by the name of Kevin Carter won the Pulitzer Prize for a photograph he took in the southern Sudan during a period of famine. If you Google the name Kevin Carter, you'll see the very photograph that I'm talking about. I want each of you to visualize the circumstances in your minds as I describe what he saw. The picture was of an emaciated child crawling on the ground who was struggling to reach a refugee camp in desolate lands of the southern Sudan. The starving boy was too weak to go farther. The child was nude, sitting on the ground, leaning forward, obviously malnourished, while a vulture, a buzzard by another name, stood nearby. Usually when we see a buzzard, they are scavenging for something already dead or about to die. It was that horrific picture that caused Kevin Carter to be criticized for spending 20 minutes to set up the photograph rather than helping the child. The press reported that because of the disease that was prevalent in the Sudan, the people on the expedition were told not to touch the starving people. I can only assume that Carter's failure to help the child or any of the other starving children tormented him. You see, just after taking the photograph, just a year later, Kevin Carter committed suicide. The metaphor of this story is that we must do what we can, when we can, to save others, to save ourselves. Each one of us has the moral responsibility to help someone else. In the words of Dr. King, what affects one directly affects all indirectly. So I'm happy to see what the Smart Justice Alliance is doing to enhance the quality of justice for all people. I underscore the word all people. We are indeed one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. I now pose a paradoxical question to everyone in the room. If given the opportunity, will you help the starving child? Put another way, what kind of leader are you? Are you a servant leader? I suggest that it is rarely only just about you, but it's more about this call to help others. Point number 2. Although crime is at a 36-year low in Florida, would you all agree that we still have a crime problem, especially among our young people? I believe that the problem centers on a teen identity crisis that we are experiencing as a society. Since September, in Orange County, we've had 2 school shootings. We've had several teenagers who either have been shot and killed or they were the killer. By the time a child reaches the age of 6, they are capable of understanding and communicating love, L-O-V-E. Mothers in the room who have children, do you remember your 6-year-old telling you things like, "Mommy, I love you"? Then something happens as we grow and we mature into adulthood. As we go through the years, we go through various stages. By the age of 10, some of our children are bold enough to begin to develop attitudes, and that "Mommy, I love you" turns to whatever. At 16, I was talking to the Browns during lunch, and they were talking to me about their 15-year-old daughter. At 16, sometimes our children get to the point where, "Mom or Dad, you're just annoying to me. I'm going to tolerate you." I say some of our children. At 18, sometimes we begin to hear from our children, "I can't wait to leave. I'm out of here. I just want to leave this house. I want to go and live my own life." And then by the time they're 25, they begin to mature somewhat. And they come back to us and they say, "Mom, Dad, you were right." See, I have 3 children, a set of twin sons, 34, and a 23-year-old son, and 3 granddaughters. So I've lived through these years. At 30, they want to just come home and visit and open your refrigerator doors and look in and peer in and eat up your food. And they start bringing their children to your house to do the same thing. And then if they live long enough and they get to be about 50 years old, those of you who are 50 or older in the room, I won't ask you to raise your hands, but you begin to develop a prayer that, "I don't want to lose Mama and Daddy." If you live to be 60 or 70 years old, you should have matured by that point, and you suddenly realize that you will give up everything for your parents if they've moved on, they've passed on. You will give up everything to be able to have but one more conversation with them. It's called maturity. But today, our children are distracted by the social media and all of the technology at their fingertips. My 16-month-old granddaughter can take a cell phone and maneuver around in the various applications. It's amazing to watch. How did she learn it at 16 months old? This creates an interesting dilemma for some of our children where they become confused about who they are. I call it an identity crisis. This crisis, sometimes as I analyze criminal behavior, I would suggest that crime issues are not purely about race, but more about socioeconomics. If you are poor and living in poverty, the research is clear. You have a disproportionate probability of either becoming a victim of crime or the perpetrator of crime. We have now socialized or raised generations to behave in certain inhumane ways, which is the root of why we have crime problems. We collectively must do a better job of teaching our children to become self-reliant in a self-indulgent world. The pendulum of public policy has swung in the opposite direction, away from incarceration. In August of last year, the United States Attorney General and the Department of Justice announced a new strategy called SMART on Crime for the purpose of reforming the criminal justice system well into the 21st century. You see, the goal is to lower our nation's prison population. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, there are approximately 220,000 federal prisoners. 59.5% of them are white, 37.1% are black, 34.9% describe themselves as being Hispanic. Juxtapose that to the population of the United States. 312 million Americans. 63% from the census data describe themselves as being non-Hispanic whites. 16% Hispanic, 13.8% black or African American, and 5% Asian. If you understand the numbers, you know that the numbers in our nation's Federal Bureau of Prisons is disproportionate. Blacks are more than twice, almost 3 times, their relative proportions in the American population who are incarcerated in our federal prisons. The Florida prison system is similar. You heard all the numbers and the demographics today, so I won't go back over them. But as criminal justice professionals, you are very familiar with these numbers. And yet, we have much work before us. Many of our children aspire to be professional athletes, rappers, or celebrities of some type. Most want to be rich. Again, I suggest that they suffer from an identity crisis because most would never be rich. It's a long shot. Not too long ago, I had lunch with Otis Smith, the former general manager of the NBA Orlando Magic, a former NBA player himself. He shared with me a startling statistic. He said that within 5 years of an average NBA player leaving or retiring from the league, within 5 years of an NBA player leaving the league, 68% of them are broke. Last year in the 2013 season, there were only 434 active players in the NBA. But we have a lot of young men aspiring to play in the NBA out of 312 million Americans. Only 434 active players in the NBA. It's a long shot, Am I right about it? Most of them come from poor families, and they know little about managing money. But boy, do they think they know a lot about money management. In the 1500s, an English farmer by the name of Thomas Tussor said that a fool and his money are soon parted. The same still holds true today. You see, in the words of Otis Smith, he summed up his comments by saying that oftentimes the money made from the multi-million-dollar sports contracts, the money is nothing more than fool's gold. Easy come, easy go. Within 5 years, 68%, better than 2/3 of them will be broke. Well, as I fast forward in my comments, I believe that although we're at historic lows for crime, I believe the reduction is related to improvements in our education system. And we are seeing the benefits of some of our long-term prevention-related programs. That means that the work that many of you have done is working. That's one of the reasons why the number of individuals being incarcerated has gone down. One of the reasons why crime is down. You've done great work. We have many opportunities to collaborate together. My agency joins in the Florida Department of Corrections in doing probation sweeps from time to time. In our community, we have fantastic community release programs, work release programs, drug courts, veterans courts, and courts that focus on dealing with the mentally ill. But I still hope you agree with me that education is the escalator that can move one out of poverty into prosperity. We've got to do a better job of providing quality education for our children. Point number 4, and my final point, how do we enhance the quality of justice? In order to have a mutuality of justice, America must achieve racial, economic, and social equality. Mahatma Gandhi said that no culture can live if it seeks to be exclusive. Respect for one's differences is a healthy sign of progress. I suggest that employers must recruit for diversity and train employees in the value of respecting others. We must change discriminatory laws and sentencing. We must ensure that laws are universally applied and understood. We must ensure that all have an opportunity at quality education. And we must develop an intolerance for bigotry. I've shared with you quite a bit this afternoon, and my time is up, especially since I was not supposed to be your keynote speaker. My final thought that I would share with you is, I cannot be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. God bless you, and may God bless these great United States of America.